Hello, Canucks fans. My name is David Quadrelli. This is Canucks Conversation. I'm not joined by the man who built the place, Chris Faber, just yet. We'll get to him shortly. We're here to break down the NHL draft. Our studio in Nashville is being taken up by Frank Saravalli right now, so Faber is getting big timed at our own studio right now, but he'll be joining us shortly. David Quadrelli alongside producer Aaron Bordato. Aaron, you can pull yourself up. I saw when I disconnected a few days ago before I got this brand new computer that I'm on here. You co-hosted with Faber, so you can pull yourself up. We want to get all the takes here. Aaron Bordato, our technical producer, stuck in Edmonton, kind of left behind like me.
I just producing all these shows, but I don't get to have any of the fun.
Look, man, we're the engine that's the driving force behind all this, and that's what we have to remember. That's what you and I have to remember.
Dude, we're glue guys.
Like
we're glue
exactly.
guys.
We're glue guys. We're good in the room. You need guys like us, and the Canucks drafted a few of those in the fourth round. We'll get to that and much more. But first, we should mention that Canuck Conversation is brought to you by the great folks over at Zephyr Epic. You can use promo code HOCKEYSEASON, capital H, capital S, all one word, hockey season. That will get you $5 off your order at zephyrepic.com. That is ZEPHYR Epic. Check them out on all platforms. Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, whatever it is, they've got you covered for all of your trading card needs. They also have a retail location in Surrey that you can go check out. We've done some video work there. Beautiful location in Surrey, British Columbia. So go check them out. Faber, if you're listening to this, we should get a poll question up. Poll question brought to you by Atlas Goods. I don't think we have one yet because Faber's been running around all morning. He was texting me, telling me I can't get an Uber from the arena. He's having all this trouble finding his way back to the hotel. Doesn't know what he's going to do. I think he might have even missed Todd Harvey's availability, which I'm sure crushed him, because it's interesting what Todd Harvey had to say about this draft class, because a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about stuff like this. And you go on Twitter, the draft class, look, the Canucks draft class, it seems like the consensus on Twitter among Canucks fans is, yeah, I'm fine with what they did in the first and the third round, but what the hell happened in the fourth round? And even the rounds after that, people are fine with it. Late round picks, you're probably not going to get NHLers or anybody that's going to stick or mean anything for your organization long term. You're likely not looking at that. So Tom Willander, that is the first guy we're going to talk about. Faber's going to give some analysis on him as well. Don't worry, folks. But you're stuck with me for now. So for those on the YouTube live show, Aaron, let's pull up the Tom Willander highlights that Faber has put together for us here. And for those on the podcast, I know this is really, really not good to listen to, so I will talk you through it. I'm not going to give play-by-play, but Faber's our prospect guy, let's be honest here. Faber today wrote an article for CanucksArmy.com about what the Canucks have in this first-round pick when Tom Willander, the 11th overall selection by the Canucks. Remember, our last episode, we went before the draft, so this is our first reaction to the first round and the second round, which is obviously now concluded. With Tom Willander, we've heard about him before, right? Like right shot defenseman, rated as the third or fourth best defenseman in this draft by most outlets. He ends up being the third defenseman selected. Also, Dmitry Simashev, a guy we hoped would be there for the Canucks at 10, that Faber seemed like the first guy, at least in my opinion, in the public sphere, to say was the best defenseman in the draft. He ends up being the first one selected by the Arizona Coyotes. So, look, I liked the Simashev pick for the Coyotes. I hoped he would be there for 10. Is it a bit of a reach at that spot? I think we'll have to wait and see, because it's like what Faber said about Simashev, where a lot of people probably looked at his Hockey DB page, saw not a lot of points in the MHL, which is the Russian Junior League, and said, okay, well, this guy can't be a player. Faber jumped into it a lot more yesterday, so if you want to hear it, go back. You maybe we'll talk about it later on in this episode. I'm sure we'll be talking about Simashev for years, but Faber thought he was the best defenseman in the draft. I take Faber's opinion pretty highly. Axel Sandin Pellikka, a guy we thought would go in the top 10. A lot of people thought he was going to be a top 10 defenseman in this draft. Ends up falling quite a bit. He turned out to be a late teens pick. So back to Tom Willander, the third defenseman taken in the draft. Right shot defenseman, out of Sweden, plays with Rögle, which is the junior club, the SHL and junior club of Nils Höglander. So we're hoping we have some connections there. I know Faber does, so that'll be good. But he's off to the NCAA next season to join Boston University, and he will be joined by Aiden Celebrini and Macklin Celebrini. But Aiden Celebrini, the Canucks' final pick in the 6th round of this draft, brother, of course, of Macklin Celebrini, the projected first overall pick of the 2024 NHL Entry Draft. I wrote about this. Canucks are playing the long game. Canucks are playing the long game with Bedard, playing the long game with Celebrini. Look, if you want to get Macklin Celebrini to come here as a UFA, draft his brother, sign his brother. Brother's not supposed to be, a world eater. Okay, go get a world beater. Get him to, give him the Brandon Tanev special. Give him a 7-year, $1 million deal. There you go, set for life. Now you get Macklin Celebrini with that deal. And my co-host, ready. Is that a highlighter in your hand? Chris Faber joins us from Nashville. Chris, how's it going? You're not sweating, so you didn't have to run back to the studio. How was the travel back?
It's actually pissing down rain. Like, we were sitting in there at the end of the draft, and the thunder and lightning started hitting. So, I might have a little bit of damp in the hair, but it's not sweat this time.
So, how do you feel about the Canucks draft? We're talking about Tom Willander, by the way, and I was laboring through that, reading your article. So, Tom Willander.
Okay, where'd you leave off? What do you want to know? That just like we did a month and a half ago, when I told you the Canucks are going to take Willander, and I said I watched every single shift of his. What do you want to know about him? Because I watched a bunch last night again.
So far, I've gotten to he is Swedish and shoots right, and I'm not even sure if I mentioned the shoots right part.
Okay, so yeah, you're talking. He's going to BU next year. Obviously, the Canucks took a little bit of a reach there, but I don't think it was the worst reach we saw in the draft, right? Like, I could see Willander very easily going 14, 15, 16 in that range, and that's probably where, if you're talking about talent, that's where he should end up. For the Canucks to go out, get a right shot defenseman, find that position of need. You heard Patrick Allvin talk about it. He said that this is the type of player that could be playing with Quinn Hughes down the road. The skating is incredible, obviously, with Willander. That's his biggest trait. I think he was the second best skating defenseman in the draft behind Simashev. And this player the development is going to be interesting watching him go to BU. He's going to be playing that Hockey East division. That's a hell of a division to grow into. On top of that, think about that United States national team line. They're all going to BC, so they're going to be matching up with him a ton, and they like the challenge for him. Also, he was doubled down today. We heard from Patrick Allvin. He said that there was the best player available for the Vancouver Canucks at 11th overall. Todd Harvey, director of scouting, said the exact same thing today when we followed up about it. So the Vancouver Canucks are very committed to saying that this was the best player available, even though Zach Benson was there. I guess they looked at that player, and though there was a ton of skill in Benson's game, they thought Willander was the best player available at the time. And like I said, they doubled down on it today.
Couple things here. The Benson versus Willander conversation seems to go back to the one we had surrounding Nate Danielson, where we talk about a guy's floor and a guy's ceiling. To me, Zach Benson has superstar potential. I don't really think that's a hot take. Tom Willander probably isn't going to be a superstar in this league, but I would argue that his floor is higher than Zach Benson's. Like, I think Willander is the safer bet to play more games in the NHL. Like, safer bet might not happen. Zach Benson could be a superstar, but a safer bet nonetheless. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think safer bet's the way to go. I think, listen, it's very difficult to find a right shot defenseman that can skate like that, can be 6'1", has a little bit of offense, and is trustworthy in his own zone. And you're not going to find that guy in the trade market. You're not going to be able to get that player in free agency. So the Canucks had to pay a little bit of a premium to go from 11 there and be able to pick Willander. But like, even, if Benson doesn't hit his absolute ceiling, he's the type of player you find in free agency. He's the type of player that teams seem to be dumping off their contracts around this time of year. Like, that's if Benson doesn't hit his absolute ceiling, which, listen, if he does, he would have been a great line mate for Elias Pettersson, and that would have been nice to see for the Vancouver Canucks. But I think Willander, like, in the end, it's not – if I was standing up there, it probably wouldn't have been my pick. But I will say that he's probably the second guy. Like, if Benson was gone, or if I kind of had like convinced from my scouting staff that he wasn't the player that we really wanted there, I'm completely fine with Willander, because I saw some people, on social media last night ripping into the Canucks saying it was a horrible peg. They reached so hard. It's the Levy 2.0. I don't think so. Like, I think you have such a good base level of skill set right now for a player who played. Listen, he's averaging about 22 minutes a night this past season. When you track down all of his games, he had 13 goals and 40 assists. Like, Willander was a forward a couple of years ago. He has a little bit more offense in him, and I think his skating is still the best part of his game. And the fact that he's going to be able to work on his defense, playing against some really good teams, as I mentioned, in the NCAA Hockey East, like, it's not perfect, but I still think it's pretty damn good with what they did with Willander. And I know you've ran the highlights already of all of his goals that we clipped from the season. like it's a good pick in the end. I'm not mad about the pick at all. Do I think that Willander is the 11th best player in the draft? No. I think he's a little bit lower down than that. But I do think at 11 overall, the Canucks needed that position. They haven't drafted a defenseman in the first 2 rounds since Quinn Hughes. They needed to go get a defenseman. And this is the guy that, by the sounds of it, the way Patrick Alvin was talking about it yesterday, this is the guy they think is going to play with Hughes in a few years.
So this is the conversation that we have every draft, right? Like, it's the conversation that people are having about Dmitry Simashev right now is, sure, the Coyotes thought he was the best player available for them as well. Canucks thought Willander was the best player available at 11, but the consensus was that those guys were going to go later. So a lot of fans wondering, okay, why didn't they trade down? And I think the simple answer is, if you look at where the Canucks would have maybe been able to trade down, it was to that Blackhawks pick at 19th. And by then, there's a serious chance that Willander's gone. So I don't think the Canucks were willing to run that risk. They got their guy. And now we wait and see if they'll come to regret it. But look, I don't think anybody had a worse draft than the Montreal Canadiens, the Detroit Red Wings. And like, I don't know if I'm willing to put Arizona in that conversation, but Detroit and Montreal, that's looking tough so far.
Yeah, I mean, listen, to see what the Detroit Red Wings did there, they end up picking Danielson at 9. I think that Canucks fans could finally stop holding their breath there. I know a lot of Canucks fans did not want to see Danielson be the guy at 11. He was the low floor, low ceiling, or high floor, low ceiling type of player, and it kind of gave us the kind of vibes of when the Canucks were able to draft Quinn Hughes when they picked Philip Zadina at that point. To see them do that and then go with ASP, yeah, they really did the Canucks a favor, it feels like, the way that we've been talking about them over the last little bit here. And that really opened up the door to be, okay, you can get one of Dvorsky or one of Benson. That was all the talk right before that 11th overall pick. But like I said, I don't really have a problem with them going with the right shot defenseman. This is a position that is extremely difficult to get in the NHL. And though I don't think, like I said, he's not a top 10 talent, and I didn't agree with the rankings where he was put in their top 10, but he's a good right shot defenseman. He's, in my eyes, immediately the Vancouver Canucks' best prospect. And honestly, I don't think it's even that close. If you're ranking it in tiers, Willander's in a tier of his own right now.
Okay, Canucks have announced their development camp at UBC next week. Kicks off on Sunday, July 2nd. Through July 5th, the Wednesday. So we'll be getting out there, talking to some players. There's one player that I really want to talk to, Chris. Are you done talking about Willander? Because I've got some things to say.
Just about it's too bad. My fiance, we haven't been able to see each other very much. She went on her bachelorette party. I went down here for the draft. She's like, "Hey, let's take Sunday together. You and me have a nice day together." Then these Canucks come out here and announce development camp, and we have to be there for day one of development camp. I'm getting my ass kicked as soon as I land in Vancouver. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough. Us out at development camp. Okay, there's one defenseman, one player from this draft class that I really, really cannot wait to talk to. I already put in the request. This is my turf. If any other media are listening to this, Hunter Brustevich, is that how you say his name?
You know what? It's gonna take me 48 hours to figure out how to pronounce Brustevich, which I'm working on it. I'm very struggling with. I'm going with Hunter for now.
Yeah, Hunter B. Tall, strong, puck-moving defenseman, but way more importantly than his on-ice characteristics, big Lego fan. Big fan of Lego. Had just built, and Aaron pulls it up beautifully, had just built the Lego Titanic, which comes in at 9,090 pieces. That is dedication. That is patience. That is precision. That is just all-around talent to go out and build that. Like, look, that guy's committed to his craft. If he's as committed to Lego as he is hockey, he's going to be the best player the Canucks took in this entire draft class, and you can take that to the bank.
Yeah, so Quads, tell me what you can learn from a hockey player when he's able to build a 9,000 plus piece Lego set. Then I need to know, what are the traits that you can get from building this massive Titanic thing that he was bragging about in Mineo to us?
Lots. So if you're in the gym and a teammate needs a spotter and you need to kind of stop your own work, yeah, you can stop your own work because you can not only have the patience and precision to do your own work, but you can go help someone else. So he's going to go spot his teammates in the gym. He's going to be a glue guy. He's going to be someone that brings everybody together. Hey, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I'm building Lego. You want to come over? Boom. Gets teammates into safe, fun activities. That's what the NHL wants from their teams. Now here's the thing, right? Is these draft questions of, what was the one that Reinbacher talked about? He's like, okay, you're in World War II and you're told to bomb an enemy ship, but your teammates are in the water and they'll die. And he says, but I don't want to kill my teammates. And then they're like, but it's in order, or whatever it was. That was the story that he told.
Yep.
Instead of asking crazy questions like that, what's your favorite Lego set? Oh, I don't have one? Okay. You're a party. You're probably not doing things you should be doing. You ask this guy, what's your favorite set? Rattles off 20, starts giving you their set numbers, not even saying them by name, just running off the numbers of the sets. That's dedication to the craft. I can't wait to talk to this kid. We're going to have a nice time talking about Lego. Tell you that much.
Yeah, I know. You guys are going to have your I can't wait for the Lego article to come out. Geez, that was 2 minutes too long already about it. But I tell you what, the right shot defenseman there, Hunter B, we're calling him. Good puck mover, obviously. Offense is kind of where he leans towards a little bit more. Playing with Kitchener last year, he was the highest scoring draft eligible defenseman out of the OHL. So that's damn impressive in his own right. And I really liked the way that kind of transitioned into the other third round pick that they make. And I see Lisa in the chat, and I know Lisa loved this pick. Lisa, let me know if I'm pronouncing it right. Sawyer Mineo. What a pick for them there at that point. This is a defensive defenseman who played in a depth role on an extremely good Seattle Thunderbirds team. What they did, obviously making their run, winning the WHL, getting a chance in the Mem Cup, all that stuff. This was the type of player that played for them and played a big role defensively. Though he was a depth guy, you're looking in the next season, he's going to be back with Seattle. He's going to be getting more minutes. We're going to see a bunch of players graduating from that Seattle Thunderbirds team. And then you have to look at him as one of those guys that needs to step up. He was there at the Mem Cup. He was there when they won the WHL championship. He's one of the guys who's probably looked at to be a leader right now. And I like a little bit more of that pressure put on a prospect, because now it's like, hey, you're drafted. You're a third-round pick. You're picked by your local team. And, he's a BC kid in his own right, down from Kamloops down there. Even though he didn't cheer for the Canucks growing up, he was an Oilers fan, he told us as well. So he's changed that real quick. But I like the fact that they're putting him in a situation now where he's going to have to be looked at as a leader. The new crop of young kids coming in, they're going to have to look at this 18-year-old kid. He's not going to be the depth guy anymore for the Thunderbirds, and I know Lisa is extremely excited about that. I see her in the chat there with Sawyer Mineo, who, as I mentioned, and I asked Canucks director of scouting, Todd Harvey, about this. The two defensemen they took in that third round, kind of opposites. You got a right-hander who's a little bit more offensive. You got a left-hander who's a little bit more defensive. Kind of like the swing there, and then I even asked a joke about it with Harvey there that, like, they were almost going to go all defensemen in this draft. The way the board shook down, like when they did end up taking the forwards, and we'll get to that, this whole fourth round is where we need to spend a little bit more time on, because that was the way more confusing picks, I'd have to say. And the fact that they went with forwards there in that spot, we'll get into that, I'm sure, in just a second. But kind of touched on it, was like they could have very easily gone all defensemen in this draft because they were taking BPA, and that's the way the board kind of shook down here.
Now, with Mineo, the thing that I kind of looked at immediately and thought of was he was able to get into games, create some offense on a very crowded Seattle blue line. Like to me, that's the biggest thing with this pick is the fact he was able to get into the Seattle lineup, and like you just said, going to be a leader next year. He was able to create some offense. Let's see if he can take that step next year. Like, let's see what that step looks like next year, because you have to think it's going to be pretty big just with the opportunity that he's going to be getting. But the fact that he was able to forge himself a spot on that blue line, I think, is the biggest thing with this pick. But I also don't know if he plays with Lego yet.
Yeah, but think about the experience he got at the WHL championship going on that team. And listen, I know he was in a depth role playing this season, but just to be able to get that experience under your belt, that has to do nothing but help for a 17-year-old kid. Yeah, he was, the guy who was playing 13 minutes a night in the dub. And that's not exactly, that's not the player that you're targeting in a first round, but you pick him up in the third. I really liked what the Canucks did with their first three picks. I know that Sawyer Mineo wasn't as highly ranked on a lot of the boards, but I like the player type, and I like the fact that they just went with another defenseman. In general, that's just what I'm happy with the Vancouver Canucks in their first three rounds. Let's get to the fourth round, because this is where I was damn confused. I actually want your take on the fourth round, Quads, because I have a feeling you've never heard of any three of these guys. We've done a lot of draft coverage at Canucks Army this past kind of 3 months here, really keying in on it. These three players were not anywhere close to being fourth round evaluations in my eyes.
This looked like this is the joke I made to you and in various group chats I'm in, is the Canucks selected Jackson Coons 3 times in the fourth round. Now, yeah. I like the big forward that they took, like 6'6" winger. The thing is, and look, I know you're a little more passionate about this than I am, but people that are actually upset about the fourth round selections, come on. I'm just like, how many times does a 4th round hit? Like, 4th round picks don't hit that often. Look, I'm not saying mail it in. I'm just saying don't lose sleep over who the Canucks picked in the 4th round. And look,
Sure.
I know a lot of guys didn't like, a lot of people didn't like the guys that they took in the 4th round. I didn't really care. I looked at their profiles and thought, yeah, okay, they took Jackson Coons 3 times. Like, that's my take on it, is none of these guys are probably, especially the overager that they took in that at first. I don't think
that was such a confusing pick.
That was confusing because he wasn't really rated anywhere. Like, he wasn't in many draft guides. He wasn't somebody that anybody really thought was going to be a draft selection this year.
I mean, he's a few months away from just being able to sign him, right? Like, this was his last chance of being an eligible draft player, and I didn't think that any other team was going to go for him. So the thing that I asked the Todd Harvey, director of scouting, about these 3 players was, like, they kind of all have the same profile. Like, they aren't the best skaters. And you know what? The best skater is actually the 6'6" winger that they took out of Sweden. I think he's the best skater of this crew. But I got to spend a lot more time watching these guys. I did get like a watch or two of Ty Mueller, but I wasn't paying attention to him. I'm watching other players in the NCAA games. But he was one of the players that was kind of being watched a little bit when we were doing our NCAA draft, kind of free agency targets at that point. But I was a little shocked to see that go. Ty Mueller goes at 105. And then it's like, Hoyt Stanley, the right shot defenseman who grew up a Canucks fan, played for the Victoria Grizzlies in the BCHL. He goes 3 picks later. Heck, Rodwin Dianocchio, like we saw, I know you like him, he's got Italian name, Quads, but like he ends up going to start the 5th round. And if you're going for an overage route, why not go with a kid who just blew up and is, after getting passed in his 1 year of draft eligibility, then he goes to Switzerland at the World Juniors, scores a huge goal for them, hits the gritty on his way after scoring that goal. And then he ends up coming in and just being excellent as you're blowing up offensively. He's the overager I would have looked at. So I was damn shocked to see some of these picks be kind of thrown around in the 4th round where, none of these 3 guys were showing up on rankings. But what we heard from Harvey was that they're smart players. And I just feel like that's the thing that gets thrown out there a lot when they don't have an actual trait that you have to be excited about, right? Like, listen, he's not the fastest skater. He doesn't have the best shot. He's not physical. He's smart. Like, that's kind of just what it feels like the go-to would be in that situation when you're talking about these prospects. And it's like, you can't measure smarts, I guess, really, when you have to just singly go out there and watch the players. So maybe you have to give it to the scouting staff at that point. Maybe these are just 3 really smart players, but I just feel like the Canucks always end up picking smart players in the 3rd to kind of 5th rounds. And I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. The 6'6" winger, Wilmer Ulriksson, which is going to be a difficult one to get working with here. But the 6'6" winger coming out of Sweden, I heard some good things about him, though. Pretty decent skater, able to go to the net. And he grew up playing in Djurgården's system as well. Got a little bit of time with Jonathan Lekkerimäki, but Harvey said there wasn't really much of a connection between those two. But that's an exciting prospect to follow. It'll be cool to see him at development camp and see how he kind of looks compared to the rest of the guys in these draft class. And if he moves extremely well, then you can start to get a little bit excited about him. But from what I heard about Matthew Perkins, who was their final pick of the 4th round, they had those 3 picks. I heard he is a very poor skater. He scored 15 goals and added 29 assists last year in 60 games. At least they got a center at that point, but there was some big names like Cam Allen, who, if you went back like a year, he was projected in the top 10. He was projected as the best defenseman. Obviously fell off quite a bit, had some bad tournaments and didn't have the best season as well, but maybe you kind of take a risk at that point. It just felt like they didn't really risk much with those 4th round picks, which is a spot where I really thought they could have taken a chance on some guys and take some of those home run swings. But it felt like these were just, all of these picks felt like a bunt to move the guy over. Like, those are what all 3 of them felt like. And it didn't feel like, the Canucks could have taken some swings there. I really thought they should have, but weak 4th round. I know a lot of people online were ripping them for that one.
First of all, nothing wrong with bunting to move a guy over, but look how intricate this Titanic set is that our boy Hunter B built. That is a big set. That is a big set to build, and I'll tell you what, that shows a lot of character. But back to the picks. You just said there was no home run swings, and that's what I think it came down to for me as well when I was looking at these. You did a mock draft over at Canucks Army where you only took home run swings, and I'll tell you what, none of these 3 guys were on that list, Chris. And I looked at that and I said, that's kind of my philosophy with the late rounds is you take those home run swings.
Yeah.
It's like in the Canucks philosophy and Ian Clark's philosophy with drafting goaltenders is take the guys that maybe don't have the best tools, but they have some real raw abilities that you can kind of mold and develop into something. That's what we saw with Archer Seelovs, right? That's what we're seeing with Archer Seelovs. That's what we hope to see with Aku Koskendvo, what we hope to see with Ty Young. No goaltender taken in this draft. We kind of thought that would be the thing. Usually it's either 2 out of every 3 years or 3 out of every 4 years. So we're assuming that the Canucks will take a goaltender next year and potentially the year after that, but no goaltender this year for the Canucks. Did that surprise you at all, or did you kind of listen to me with the whole 2 and 3 thing?
Yeah, no, I was listening to you on the goalie stuff, and I think once, because there was a pretty good run there at the start of the second round. Started today. I think there was 3 in the first 7 picks of the second round, or 3 in the first 9 picks. Like they ran off pretty quick there in a row, and then Damian Clara ended up going just a little bit later than that. I know that's the one that you liked because he was born in Italy, but yeah, I didn't see the Canucks really targeting a goaltender that late. Maybe they'll go find a guy next year in the draft that they like when it's a little bit deeper. But we'll touch on the final one here because a little tie-in. Obviously, his dad used to work for the Vancouver Canucks. His brother's projected right now to be the top pick in the 2024 NHL Entry Draft, and the Canucks picked up Aiden Celebrini, who is also a position of need as a right shot defenseman. I liked this pick in the 6th round. I think this is where he was likely to go, and I think the fact that you can go out there and get a position of need, watch him develop. He's going to be playing with his brother. He's also going to be playing with Tom Willander. They're all going to the same school together at BU next year. So I like that. It's also going to make scouting a little bit easier for me to be able to watch these guys and, keep up with the highlights. So I like the player, 6'1" out of the AJHL. And in the 6th round, this is the type of player I love to see them draft. So I'm happy with Aiden Celebrini. Anything to add on him?
No, like I said, I don't know if you were here at the start, but I was talking about him saying that's the long game to get Macklin Celebrini and Connor Bedard to sign here in free agency. That's the long game, Chris. That's the long game. And I want to read this tweet. Sorry, I don't do any show prep or send anything to Aaron, but I'll read this tweet from JD Burke. Actually, in my defense, this came out after the show started, but this from Elite Prospects editor-in-chief JD Burke. He said, the general feeling in the industry is that the Canucks did well to add Tom Willander and Hunter B to their system, but not much love for their work from that point on. A lot of players that weren't ranked and weren't even on other teams' radars. Yeah. Does that surprise you at all?
I mean, a little bit, especially with Vancouver, maybe having some of those local ties to, like, Mazden Leslie didn't end up getting selected. He's a center from right shot defenseman from the Vancouver Giants, and I know he's got some size behind him. I was a little surprised to see him not get picked. Jordan Turingi from the QMJHL, another right shot defenseman. Like, these type of players were a little bit surprising to see them not at least have a team take a swing on them, but it just feels like the NHL teams stuck to their list, right? They stuck to their lists, and a lot of players are going to slide through the cracks here at this point, and that's kind of the way we saw it play out. So there's a lot of scouting sites, and you mentioned Elite Prospects there. The way that they talked about the Canucks draft is maybe one of the worser ones. That's unfortunate for value, but we'll have to see, because I think that there's a lot there with Willander, and specifically it's difficult, right? Because how much have we talked about, like, hey, the Canucks need a defenseman. They didn't need a defense prospect. So to go out and get Willander at 11, the reach wasn't that bad. That's kind of the way that I've been feeling about this player for a long time, where it's like I would have preferred Willander over Danielson for the Canucks' prospect system. And I know Danielson's a center. Listen, the Canucks need centers as well, but just you're not going to be able to find this type of player anywhere else but in the draft. And now it's going to come down to how they develop him. And I like the fact that there's 2 players on their prospect pool now going to BU. I know that Patrick Albine also mentioned somebody from his staff is a former BU player as well, so he's going to be involved quite a bit. And that's, those are all the type of things that we like to see. So it's all going to come down to development. And I'm super curious to see what happens here with Willander. Is he a one and done? Like, are we talking like an NBA style type of move here when he plays? I think it was shocking enough to hear that he was going to the NCAA in its own right. And that kind of opens up the door where we've talked about this in the past of, like, listen, Swedish players don't like coming over to the AHL, right? They're a lot bigger stars. They get a lot better. They get treated way better when they're in the SHL, and that's why a lot of them won't come to the AHL to kind of develop. So I'm curious to see what happens if it goes well for Willander. Does he like the Canucks enough at that point to say, okay, like, I'm going to go to the AHL after 1 year? And that would be cool. Like, it's just steady progression, getting yourself closer and closer to the NHL. And if Willander is going to do that, like I'd love to see him in Abbotsford after a year in the NCAA, but I think he'll probably do a couple years before he comes up. And hopefully at that point, I think the expectation for himself when he does want to go pro is probably to play in the NHL. And we'll have to see what happens. Like it might end up being 3 full seasons in the NCAA before we see Willander coming up to the NHL. So I think it was interesting to hear Alvin talk about it. He said it's not a sprint. And then he started saying it's more of a marathon, and he stopped himself and he said, but maybe not with Willander as such a marathon as well. So I think they're hoping that it's going to be, 1 or 2 years here and then get him into pro hockey. And I don't think it'd be any problem having him out in Abbotsford working with the Sedins every day too.
Quickly here, Thomas Milic. Lisa made a point of mentioning it, and I want to as well. Thomas Milic from Coquitlam, former Coquitlam Express, played 1 game for them, was drafted in the 5th round at 151 by the Winnipeg Jets. So shout out Thomas Milic. Okay, for your draft day haul, I don't know if you sent this to Aaron or not, but you did a mock draft of your own, the live blog over at Canucks Army, where you looked at each pick and at each spot you wrote who you would have selected. Now, I want to quickly go through your list, Chris, because you ended up with 1 forward and all defensemen the rest of the way. Your thought process there was just to load up on the prospect pool and load up defense, because you took a lot of right defensemen here. It's up on the Canucks Combo Twitter account if you want to go look at it, folks. But all defensemen, and we don't have to talk about it en masse, but I think that's the route that I think a lot of Canucks fans would have liked to see the team take in this draft.
I would have had no problem if they would have gone all defensemen. And yeah, you mentioned it, the live blog. I just picked who I would have taken in that spot, and I felt really good coming out and seeing the list of players that I ended up getting there. I think the first 2 picks you could see today, I mean, like you can make the argument either way for the Canucks or my pick. I would go either way. I like both the options that we went there. We both ended up picking left shot and right shot defenseman in that spot. But that 4th round, like if you would have come out of that with Hoyt Stanley, Rodwin Dinocchio, and Chase Cheslock, like those are 3 big-bodied prospects who have a lot of really exciting skills. Then you look at who the Canucks ended up drafting. It's 3 prospects. One's a big body. The other 2 are undersized. One of them's a center. The other one's a winger. Not really an exciting skill in any of those games. The most exciting skill with who the Canucks picked in the 4th round is the one guy's 6'6". Oh, I just think that when you're swinging in the 4th round, you got to take some big swings. You got to go for that skill that just sticks out. And I kind of asked about that with Matthew Perkins specifically, and the way that it was talked about with Todd Harvey. He was saying like, yeah, there was one of our scouts who really, really, really loved his skating. And I'm thinking the scouts that I were talking to were saying that they didn't like his skating, and that's why he slipped quite a bit. And they didn't even have him on their list. So I don't know. And then Connor Levis, yeah, I mean, like good Kamloops kid, got a really good opportunity this past year to be at the Memorial Cup. They were hosting, obviously, and he's a guy that could easily pop 40 plus in the dub next year. So I think the fact that he went deep, I think he ended up just getting picked like after pick 200 or something. But I went with him in the 6th round. I like the player there, and I think Aiden Celebrini, I think, is in a similar area. So I didn't think that was too bad. But I really think like that's where. Maybe I'm biased because it's literally my draft that we did, but I think my 4th round was much better than the Canucks anyways. But hey, 5 years from now, let's look down the road. Maybe I'm just an idiot. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. What now? What now is free agency. Actually, when do you come back home? Like when's your flight out of Nashville?
Bright and early tomorrow morning. I think like 7:30 my time here. So I'll, which is like 5:30 Vancouver time. So yeah, I've done my going out for the week here in Nashville. I didn't go out last night either. So yeah, last 2 nights, nothing.
And you'll be doing some sort of recap of everything, the whole draft class. I think we'll be doing a grading each pick, maybe a roundup. We haven't really talked about it, but you'll obviously kind of be championing our draft coverage as you have this whole time. I thought we did a great job. I just want to give ourselves a little pat on the back here. I think we've done a fantastic job with Canucks Army this week. I think it's been fantastic. Yeah. So what's next? Free agency. You're coming here on Saturday. We're working together. No show, but we will probably do one on Monday. Like you're going to be at Dev Camp on Sunday. I don't know if I'm going to make it out for that, but you'll be out there. I guess free agency is the next thing. Like that's the next thing on the docket, and it's coming quick. Like we're going to be doing free agency the day after you get home.
Yeah. And Frank was just on talking about Carson Soucy as well to keep an eye on for the Vancouver Canucks. We've heard Rick Dollywall reporting on Ian Cole Couple of defensemen to watch. That we know the Canucks need a defenseman that can kill penalties, and there are some ones out there right now, of course. We actually ranked them with the dog rating formula as well. If you want to check that over at Canucks Army, I ranked the top 15 players and measured how much dog they have in them. So that's over on Canucks Army right now. I think the Canucks still need to address that third line center. They still need to get a defenseman who can kill penalties. They still need someone who can play with Quinn Hughes. Like, are we seriously talking about Noah Juleson being the partner for Quinn Hughes to start the season? Like, he doesn't even have a contract yet. Like, they literally don't have anyone on their roster to play with Quinn Hughes right now because I don't think it's going to be Philip Hronek. They're going to want him to be second pairing guy. There's a lot of work to be done for the Canucks on free agency, and I know they do have some cap flexibility, obviously, after the OEL buyout, but they don't have enough money to fix all their problems still. There's still a lot of money on their books that is not going to help them next season as much as it should be. So we'll have to see what happens here moving forward.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on free agency day. Odds and ends. Do you have anything that you want to get in here?
No, just for what's next. Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to stop for I get in on Friday. I guess Saturday will be the time I get to spend with my fiance. But yeah, development camp on Sunday. And development camp's the exciting one because we love the young stars, obviously, out in Penticton. It's a blast to go there, but you're not getting every single prospect in the system. At development camp, you're getting the NCAA guys, you're getting the European guys, but because young stars is at the time where the NCAA guys are reporting and starting their schooling and even getting some practices going, as well as the SHL, Liga, KHL, all those leagues, they're actually going to be starting their regular seasons by the time that young stars goes down. So this next week is the only time that you can see all of the prospects together. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, you'll be out there doing your Lego talk or whatever you're doing here. Are you going to bring like a set with you? Because I saw you built a Lego set the other day. It looked like it was 9 blocks. It was like those big block series. You built a little Lego man or something. It didn't look like it was 9,000 pieces like Hunter B over there.
The upscaled minifigure is what you're referring to, and It is over 600 pieces. It is a great set, but yeah, you build. So basically, it's like a minifigure, but you build each limb. So you build the legs, right, and you put them together so they look like big blocks. A lot of pieces in there, Chris. A lot of pieces. They don't make Lego pieces that big. There's a system with Lego pieces. They're all the same size, right? So. Yeah.
Oh, I got outside during my childhood and I had a good time doing all that stuff, playing sports and seeing friends instead of playing with Lego all day. But I'm excited to see what happens. Next week's going to be another fun week. But the other thing Hunter said was he's very careful with his Lego because he's got 3 dogs. And his pit bull, he said if he leaves a piece of Lego on the floor for 10 seconds, his pit bull's eating it up. So I know you're in the same boat right now with your dog. I'm sure Lego's a big problem for you. There's Bert right now on the cam. Yeah, looking good.
Yeah, I brought him up on the camera. A lot of people asked for a Bert cam in the chat today. But, the trick that I found is you put it in a tub and you kind of build it on your lap. But because you go one bag at a time, right? Like with a Lego set, if it's, I said it's 9,090 pieces for Hunter, our boy there. But it's not like he opened up every bag and dumped it into a pile and then had to search for his pieces. At least I hope that's not what he did. Usually they're kind of sectioned off. I think the Titanic is like 18 bags. I got to ask him about it. This is why I got to do the story and go talk to him about it. But, you do one bag at a time, so it's a little less daunting. And it's funny, that Titanic that I was explaining to people, it basically comes together in 3 separate sections and it splits down the middle. So you put it you do your sections and then you put it together in the middle, and then that's where if it broke apart, it would break right down the middle.
Just like the movie.
Yes, exactly.
Or I guess the real boat too. I guess the movie's based off of a real event, I guess. Did you? You know what? I just watched James Cameron's. He's got a documentary. I think it's on Netflix or something. Or one of these streaming sites, but he talks about making how this dude loves the Titanic. He's a huge fan of the Titanic. It was a good little documentary. It was like 45 minutes, and he showed how they made it, and then it was cool. It was a cool little story. So a lot of Titanic stuff here on the show today.
Dude, I had books on the Titanic when I was a kid, like
Really?
little I loved the Titanic as a kid. I found it so fascinating, right? So anyways, the Titanic Lego set runs you $849 Canadian, so I'm not buying that anytime soon. But hey, I'm happy Hunter was able to build it. I definitely also don't have room to store it. Maybe I do. I got a couple shelves. Maybe.
Yeah, you got a couple. We'll see. Your birthday's coming up in 8 months, so maybe you'll get the 9,000 piece set that you're looking for big time.
And we've got people in the chat asking if there's a submarine Lego set. And yes, there are a few. So you might be able to build the companion.
I wasn't going to touch the sub stuff. Keep that out of here. I know people in the chat are going off about it. I'm not touching that thing.
Yeah. People build icebergs with their type. People get creative. It's creative. It's Lego. Yeah. Anyways.
Build a whole little room. I used to tell you back when I used to manage the A&W when I was real young, I had a lady there. She was an older lady, and every paycheck we got that Friday, she went right down to Walmart and Toys R Us, and she got herself a set every time. Old Jean. She was great. Loved working with her. Everybody hated her except for me.
Yeah, you've talked about her a few times on this show, so she's made an impression on you. Yeah, yep. You got to get some Lego. I think that's our next step.
No, I'm not playing. I'm not playing. I don't have time to sit there with Lego, and I got fat fingers. I can't be playing the little ones. I'm fine with the ones that are like 8 dots on the top, but the ones that are 2, my fingers are too fat. They get lost in between them and stuff like that when I'm putting them together.
Okay, maybe Lego's not for you. We'll get you Duplo or Mega Blocks, the ones that they have for toddlers. So
I need the Mega Block for toddlers and fat-fingered men.
Okay. We'll close it out there. We'll be back on Monday or Tuesday to talk about what the Canucks have done in free agency. But folks, read along at CanucksArmy.com. We've had a lot go up on the site in the past week, and that's going to continue through the weekend. But for now, safe travels, my friend. For my co-host, Chris Faber, and our technical producer, Aaron Berdato, thanks for following along this week, folks. My name is David Gugelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Woo!
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a thank you, Jim?